the next speaker will not be Rudy Campo. You know that Rudy Campo likes to give opportunities to new colleagues. So we will have the opportunity to hear Elena van Keurenbroek from the Life Expert Center. She is working also in the University of Genk, and she is responsible for the benign surgery in the University of Genk. Elena.
Thank you very much for this introduction. To introduce the refractory endometrium, we could say that there's a lack of proliferative growth, that the endometrium is refractory to hormonal treatment, and we assume that it has a role in implantation failure. To see if the endometrium is optimal to transfer a good embryo is a challenge, like already said. And we have to emphasize that the prevalence of a thin endometrium or refractory endometrium is really, really low. It's estimated on 2.4%. And even we as clinicians, we prefer to have this endometrial lining of 7 millimeters. Available evidence doesn't support any specific thickness. And this is because we know that pregnancies can be achieved of an endometrium between 5 or 15 millimeters. The live birth rate is lower, but not low. So to use the endometrial thickness as a tool to cancel IVF cycles seems not justified. Sorry. But assume that you have this perfect euploid embryo, that the uterus seemed normal on 2D scan, 3D scan, and maybe even an MRI. And still it fails. You put the embryos inside or you do the transfers and it fails a few times. We only have the endometrium then. We can evaluate the thickness, we can evaluate the pattern, the blood flow, like already said. But then we can have a look inside this beautiful room where the magic has to happen by hysteroscopy. The hysteroscopy gives us the hands and the eye to have a look inside to check in cases of thin endometrial lining if the endometrium is homogeneous or if it has patches of deficient growth. We can take biopsies under vision, and like in this patient, we can discuss about inflammation, about adhesions, maybe some scar tissue there on the side wall. And if we took a biopsy in this patient, we saw that there was deficient endometrial lining and also plasma cells. So just one slide about endometritis, because I think it deserves it when we talk about hysteroscopy and failed implantation. It's not typical, the thin endometrial lining, of course, but the hysteroscopy has proven to be the most sensitive tool for the diagnosis, and we have to learn the young people to have a look inside and to see the signals like micropolyposis, strawberry pattern, hyperemelia. Of course, there's one big cause to check by hysteroscopy, and these are the adhesions, or the Asherman syndrome. We know that this is secondary due to endometrial trauma, and it has a negative relationship to implantation and correct sperm migration. We also know that the ultrasound can be normal or can be just thin endometrial, and there are adhesions. So I think it's just a shame to not have a look inside the uterus. Prevention is everything that you know, and with the advanced miniaturized hysteroscopic instruments, we can perform more nice surgery with less adhesions post-operatively. We can remove the placental remnants, and like was already shown on the first day at this Congress, also in our department, we started by using the hysteroscopic morcellation to resect the miscarriages. And I was even impressed, hopefully you saw the videos, that it didn't bleed. That was the first case I did. I made a video directly. It was really nice to just take out of the tissue without any bleeding, leave the rest of the cavity intact. So I think maybe in the future we can leave the DNC and use the hysteroscopy as a tool for these patients. But then, suppose that also this is normal, that we did the hysteroscopy, we didn't have adhesions, we didn't have endometritis. We start cooking. We do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. We try to do different ways of hormones, maybe some supplements, aspirin, sildenafil. Everybody does it. But of most of these advices, there's no evidence of benefit or there's an unclear effect. But still, we have gaining interest in the pathophysiologic features of thin endometrium. And this is the base of using platelet-rich plasma. It is already told before that we can perform a centrifugation of the whole blood, And then we have this concentrate that is really rich in growth factors and cytokines. And we don't have to be stupid because there's already experience of more than 30 years in other disciplines for tissue generation. And also in the endometrium, we believe that it promotes angiogenesis, that it induces cell proliferation and migration, that it also has a role for this maybe chronic endometritis because it has an antimicrobial activity, and it, like I said, it accelerates tissue remodeling. If we have a look in the literature, you see that there's a gaining interest too, that people start making publications more and more. But the literature nowadays is still of variable value, and this is because we just don't have a consensus. How to use it, the way we use it, how much we use it, infiltration, infusion. So I hope we can go home with maybe a tool or a validated proposal to treat the patients with the PRP. What we use it also, is this validated tube. It's Korean. And the advantage is that it is a validated device, and based on the thrombocyte count of the patients, we can know exactly how much we infuse in the patient. So here you see, we also prefer to perform the subendometrial injection and the instillation. We use it for the patients of implantation failure and recurrent miscarriage. But I must admit that most of these patients, we find adenomyosis. And to have only the group of thin endometrial lining, like I started my talk, the prevalence is really low, estimated 2.4%. So often you find other things to heal, and you make, like the cooking, a combined treatment of GnRH analogs and the PRP. So I must emphasize that we are still using it as an adjuvant treatment. But you see how easily you can perform it with the hysteroscopy, injected in the anterior, posterior wall. We use the 19-gauge needle, but we also use for the pickups, because also we have some indications to do the ovarian rejuvenation, and then we can use the same needle without bleeding and without any complications. With permission to Attilio, I can say that he started now an interventional prospective non-randomized study, especially for patients with this thin endometrial lining. In these patients, there's a priming cycle with estrogen from day 2 till 3 for 10 days. Then these patients got also the subendometrial infiltration like I showed you on day 10 till 12. And then they started progesterone treatment. On day 10 or 12 of the next month, the next cycle, the endometrial lining is scanned by ultrasound. If it's good, transfer. If it's not good, or the history of repeated implantation failure, patients get a PRP infusion. The results are promising. They are quite good. The endometrial thickness was better, even positive beta-HCG. And I know we don't have the big results so far, but I think the most important conclusion to make with this talk and with this congress is that it was a brilliant idea to bring the three disciplines together. And it was a pleasure to be carried by these three musketeers yesterday evening, and I hope it was a bit inspiring. Thank you very much.